Hi, everyone. Welcome to Question Period Rewind. I'm Donna Skelly, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. 1986, what a year. In Toronto, a TTC ride was 45 cents for kids and $1 for adults. Over at Honest Ed's, you could get a pair of pantyhose for 77 cents. And the population of Ontario was about 9 million people. Now, let's see what the hot topics were for the province at that time.
Oral questions. The Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, in my view, unaccountable and unusual absence of both the Minister of Labour and the Minister of Industry in the face of the Goodyear situation, I have a question for the Treasurer and Minister of Economics. It appears from the press this morning, and after having contacted Mayor Bruce Sinclair's office in Etobicoke, that the Mayor apparently asked the Minister of Industry if he would do an economic development study of the Lakeshore area. Our understanding from the Mayor's office is that the Minister refused that request. Could you explain why the Minister would refuse that request?
I'd like to respond to the preamble from the Leader of the Opposition. I think he should be aware that the two ministers who are absent from their places this afternoon are right now meeting with the president of the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, or whatever the proper name is, who has come with some of his senior executives from Akron, Ohio to Toronto to consult in this important matter. I know that the presence in the House of all ministers is desirable, but all of these executives are making themselves available on short notice, so we don't thank them for it because we required their attendance and they're here. And the ministers are dealing with them at this time, and I hope that there will be some useful information that comes out of that meeting. In answer to the specific question asked, I was not aware that a request had come from the Mayor of Etobicoke for an economic analysis of the Lakeshore area, and I'd be glad to consult with the two ministers concerned to see what information we could provide or what initiative we can take to satisfy the requirements of that community.
Supplementary.
Well, let me say to the Treasurer, our information was not that they had requested anything but a study, and that your Minister had said no. And my question related to that refusal by your Minister. I also want to say to the Treasurer that some of us on this side have been in this similar situation in terms of having meetings conflicting with the House. But I will say that it's my experience that the officials from Akron, Ohio, or wherever surely would have understood if the Minister had said that pursuant to our system, he would have to wait 10 or 15 minutes to answer questions in the legislature. That might have been that might not only have been appropriate, but it might have been an opportunity for the Minister to emphasize to those officials the degree to which this is a serious public matter, such that he had to report to the House and defer the start of the meeting, at least in terms of his presence, for 5 or 10 minutes.
To wring your neck.
Might I ask the Treasurer this question? On April the 11th, 1985, on an occasion I'm sure he'll remember, while his leader was campaigning as Leader of the Opposition during the election campaign, visiting the Burns Meats plant, the leader of your party said that he, if elected, would make available expertise from the Ministry to conduct feasibility studies and, when needed, to provide interim funding until private financing or worker equity can be raised. Now, given the fact that all the information indicates this is a profitable operation, can you give the House a commitment this afternoon, which your Minister may take to that meeting, that indeed you would be willing to provide all interim funding necessary until a new purchaser can be found for this fine company?
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to just respond briefly to the lengthy introductory comment the Leader of the Opposition made to his question. I'm sure you'll recall, sir, that yesterday, at the behest of the official opposition, the House adjourned its regular business to deal with the important matter of the announcement having to do with the Goodyear closing announcement. That I had indicated at that time that the ministers would have an opportunity to meet with the American officials and would have information available if the debate were held today. But the official opposition insisted on adjourning the business yesterday, and in spite of the fact that it was an extremely important debate, on 2 occasions, I believe at least one, there was a quorum call and there were only 2 Conservatives in their place. I'll tell you, for the Leader of the Opposition to criticize my 2 colleagues for not being present in the House when they're at this moment meeting with the President of Goodyear Company is highly irregular and irresponsible in my view. I would say further, Mr. Speaker, that the government will do everything it can to discuss with the people in Goodyear. We hope that we can provide what analysis will be effective, and I look forward to hearing from the 2 ministers when they have an opportunity to report to the House.
Final supplementary.
I might say to the Treasurer that he may have considered an amendment with regard to sexual orientation, which the government has been afraid to bring forward for 5 months.
Supplementary.
Major, more important yesterday than the Goodyear closing. But in this party, we considered the Goodyear closing to be more urgent yesterday than the sexual orientation motion, which you've kept off the order paper for several months.
Order.
You didn't have the courage to bring...
Order. Order. Would the honourable member take his seat? Order. 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 Does the member have a final supplementary?
I wonder if the Treasurer would tell us whether he has equipped his minister, who has skipped question period to have the meeting with the Goodyear people, with the information that the government would be happy to make available land out of the government's land bank for the possible construction of a new Goodyear plant in new facilities.
Treasurer. I have not, Mr. Speaker. I think we should bear in mind that the announcement came last Friday. It seems sensible to us that the debate on the matter might take place after all of the facts were available. Today, perhaps tomorrow, after we'd had a chance to meet with the officials. I have not been requested to provide money for lands or anything like that because it seems reasonable that we should have all of the facts and have an opportunity to discuss it both in this House and as a government.
New question.
By the time you get around to doing anything, the Goodyear plant will be gone and all the options will be gone. I have a question for the minister responsible for senior citizens. I know he will have had a chance to read the auditor's report. The auditor reports with regard to homes for the aged in this province that the frequency and scope of inspection activities are not specified, that actual inspections were infrequent, and that results of inspections and follow-up of deficiencies noted were poorly documented. I know he will have also seen the report of 41 files that were looked at by the auditor, which found that in 39 of the 41 cases, reviews in the dietary area were absent, fire inspection reports were absent in 31, no independent nursing reviews or level of care reviews were present in 25 of the 41, no annual medical reports in 17, and no building maintenance reports in 13. I'm sure the minister will agree with me that that's a rather frightening situation. I wonder what the minister plans to do about it.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable Leader of the Opposition realizes, I'm sure, that the immediate responsibility for the homes for the aged and, as a matter of fact, for the charitable homes is under the Ministry of Community and Social Service, and I will gladly share that question that you have posed with him. However, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important to point out to the honourable Leader of the Opposition that if he takes a moment or two to look at our white paper called a new agenda, he will realize that I have some responsibility, and I would like to quote from that just a line or two to point out what my responsibility is. On page 17, it says as follows: we will undertake a major revision and rationalization of the extended care program and also address complementary issues in adjacent services such as residential care and rest homes. What this means in so many words, Mr. Speaker, is that we are going to write a new Extended Care Act which will cover the Nursing Home Act, the Homes for the Aged Act, and the Charitable Institutions Act.
Supplementary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary.
The auditor, in fact, refers to the process which you've referred to, which is yet another one in a series of promises you people make over there. And it says here that up until the time of the auditor's work, no formal guidelines had been issued to establish the extent and frequency of inspections. We were advised, the auditor says, by senior officials that guidelines had not been issued because of a study being carried out on the accountability relationships between the ministry and its agencies receiving grants. So we know the excuse that's being given for not putting in place guidelines. My question to the minister is this: are you prepared to have all of these senior citizens' residents go uninspected, without guidelines, without reviews of their dietary situation, until you finally bring in legislation changing the relationships, or are you going to do something to protect them in the meantime?
Well, as the minister, as the member full knows, Mr. Speaker, as being a former minister in the cabinet, that there are many times when you work cooperatively with your colleagues in cabinet. And certainly that is what we are about now that we have formed the government. And let me submit to you that we are no longer going through the turf wars that you fellows went through when you were running the ship. I want to tell you, Mr. Speaker, that it is our intent to develop a single improved act which will apply to all providers and establish uniform criteria in such areas as inspection services, programming, staffing, quality of care, and physical plant standards.
Final supplementary.
Minister, that statement of good intentions really does nothing for the senior citizens who are currently in over 100 uninspected homes, 130 homes without guidelines, without review whatsoever of their dietary situations. Those kinds of answers and promises that when you get around to cooperating and get new legislation, you hope to be able to do something about it, is a serious abdication of your responsibility today to the seniors who are in those homes. Now,
Question?
I don't dispute your good intentions. My simple question to you is whether your government is happy and content to leave the current situation in place until you get about the new changes, or are you going to take some action today to put in place a complete inspection program for those seniors?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition will recall that the guidelines to which he is referring in all three questions were guidelines that were issued and supposed to have been acted upon in 1983. And it is my information that, in fact, nothing happened of those people across the way, nothing happened with their implementing those guidelines. So I'm submitting to you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. 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 New question. Order. New question, the member for York South.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question to the Premier relating to the report of the provincial auditor. The provincial auditor not only indicts the government for its failure to inspect homes for the aged, for the fact even that something as basic as the protection of trust money deposited on behalf of seniors, even that is not being adequately protected. Health and safety is not being adequately protected of seniors. There's a devastating indictment of the Ministry of Labour and the failure to inspect, the failure to provide adequate health and safety, the fact that there are workers being killed because inspections are not taking place. There is a devastating indictment of the inspection of public health and the way in which public health is administered. I wonder if the Premier can give this answer. Why does the government remains so profoundly unconcerned about the health and safety of its older people and the health and safety of its workers, and indeed the health and safety of all its citizens who are supposed to be the beneficiaries of programs, that this kind of indictment, a year and a half after they came to power, can still be made by the provincial auditor.
Premier.
Say to the honourable member that I just had a very brief briefing on what's in the auditor's report. As you know, it came down about 5 or 10 minutes before we came into the House. I am aware in general terms that a number of those suggestions and or allegations were made. I just want to assure the honourable member that I take them extremely seriously. I'm not in a position to respond to the specific details in the report, but I can tell you that I take the report seriously, as do my colleagues. And I can assure you we'll be acting on the basis of this information.
Supplementary, the member for Sudbury East.
I have a supplementary to the Premier. Today, the provincial auditor reiterated what I've been saying to the guardian of the swamp now for a year and a half, that the haphazard method of inspecting is costing serious injury, loss of time, and even life. And the official response from the Ministry of Labour is to circle the wagons, as they usually do. Let me quote. The division seriously questions whether it's appropriate to second-guess the assigning of inspection cycles by the division staff experienced in the matter of health and safety. Now,
We know best.
if the staff is so good, why do we have an ever-increasing, escalating number of accidents and almost a daily fatality in this province? And isn't this really what's going on in the Ministry of Labour, what the inspectors themselves call it, crisis management, because there aren't enough inspectors to do the job properly?
Premier? Again, I respect my honourable colleague's knowledge of this particular matter and the fact that he has raised this for a considerable number of years in this House. The honourable member will be aware that there is a review into this entire aspect of the ministry, which he refers to in different terms. But I assure you that I take your comments, we take the comments of the auditor very seriously. I can't give you a detailed response, but I know the ministry will be in a position to give you that, and hopefully in the not-too-distant future.
Final supplementary, the member for Scarborough West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, to the Premier. The Premier is probably aware that homes for the aged in this province are a line budget item of well in excess of $200 million. And yet your ministry, in response to the auditor's report, has said the following. As regards the area of inspection procedures, in our view, responsibility and accountability for the day-to-day management of homes, client care and outcomes, program quality and effectiveness rests with the boards of management and boards of directors of those homes. That's an old Tory policy which leaves a total lack of accountability to the prime budget control, which is you. Are you going to stick with that policy, or are you going to change it and put in proper inspection procedures, which in this case don't even match the inadequate ones we have for nursing homes?
Premier.
Exactly the same thing for hospitals.
Let me assure my honourable colleague, Mr. Speaker, through you, that we are not wedded to the past in any way. Indeed, when we assumed office, we were tackling a number of problems, as you are very well aware. You can argue that we haven't made enough progress in some areas, and perhaps in some areas your criticism is justified. But I want my honourable colleague, just in a fair, and the auditor, and I take this very seriously, but I just want the honourable member to be fair-minded about this as well. And he'll refer to the auditor's report, and I just quote it to you for your own information. It said, in the past year, we have observed a concerted effort on the government's part to consider and implement the study's recommendations. There has been a renewed emphasis on accountability, relationships, and administrative policies and practices, and are undergoing a thorough review and revision. Greater attention has been focused on values in the working environment and on executive planning and development. So what the auditor says, I think, and there are criticisms, and there always will be, that there are problems, but this government has shown a determination to try to wrestle with them fundamentally, and I value your advice, the advice of my colleagues opposite, as well as the auditor, in dealing with these questions.
New question. The member for York South.
Whether inspections are going to start or not, we have to start talking about 43 and a half years of Tory government. The question that I have for the Attorney General, Mr. Speaker, with respect to equal pay, another minister who has made a point of talking about how long people are going to have to wait for justice. Mr. Speaker, to the minister, he will no doubt be aware of of the law and the delays that are contained therein. I'd like to ask the minister to consider a hypothetical smaller plant, and he will know that more and more employees are working in smaller operations rather than large operations. In a workplace with 25 workers where 10 men make $17,000 a year and 15 women make $14,000 a year, with pay adjustments based on 1% of the preceding year's payroll, if it was determined that they were doing work of equal value, on top of overall wage increases of 4% a year, it will take 12 years to eliminate the gap between men's and women's wages, which would mean that under your bill, they'd have to wait 12 years plus 6 years, which means 18 years. I'd like to ask the Attorney General, why should the women of Ontario who work in this kind of a plant have to wait 18 years for equal pay for work of equal value?
Those questions that used to appear in the Globe and Mail and in the mathematics column, in which you were asked to see if you could answer the conundrum. I'll take notice of the question and determine the answer at the earliest possible moment. While I'm on my feet, I should respond to a point made by the honourable member yesterday when he was concerned about figures, and I have inquired into the matter, and it appears that 57.8% of the female workforce in Ontario will be covered by pay equity 3 years following proclamation. What?
His church went broke, we can understand.
Order. It's great to be able to smile once in a while, but now maybe we could have a supplementary. Member for York South.
Appreciate the chance to ask a supplementary to the Attorney General. The fact of the matter is that the Liberals can laugh, but the fact of the matter is that there are tens of thousands of women who are going to be waiting until well into the 21st century under the law that you have proposed today before they will receive equal pay. But by way of supplementary, I'd like to ask the Attorney General about those other tens of thousands of women who are not covered because they are working in areas that are dominated by women, and they are not able, under the legislation proposed, to make any comparisons whatsoever. I'd like to ask the Attorney General, and he will be aware that nursing home workers were able to benefit from an arbitration decision that allowed them to compare their wages with the wages of hospital workers, and that's how they were able to finally get some increases. I'd like to ask the Attorney General, why should nursing home workers and hospital workers and daycare workers working in the public sector for organizations funded by the province of Ontario and the people of Ontario have to be satisfied with a simple study by the Pay Equity Commission, which, as we all know, is a pseudonym for doing absolutely nothing for those women at the lowest end of the wage scale?
Minister.
It was not that badly received. The Equal Pay Coalition referred to it as a positive response. The Canadian Union of Public Employees, usually a firm supporter of the third party, called it a bold initiative. The president of the Ontario division of the Canadian Union of Public Employees called it a bold step forward. Now, none of those people think the bill is perfect. I don't think it's perfect. I highlighted in the statement yesterday the problem that is presented with a job comparison system where there are units in which no comparisons can physically be made. I presented that as a real problem that is presented by any pay equity proposal. I indicated that we were going to study that for the purpose of canvassing the number of solutions that can be made, and that canvass and the determination of how we would respond to it would be made in time to assure people in those groups wage adjustments as members in other groups of the same size would be getting wage adjustments. Now, I don't pretend for a moment that perfection is found in our responses. I know where perfection is found because I'm told about it almost every second day. The only person who's dumped on this bill, of course, is the member for Ottawa Centre, who dumps on everything. But the reality is that the bill is a major, important initiative. We are looking forward to positive suggestions that are made about the solution. And for example, with respect to the problem that the honourable member raises, I look forward not to a strident...
Order. The question. Final supplementary, the member for Ottawa Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the minister responsible for women's issues how a woman who is 50 years old, who works in a firm with 20 people in it, who is looking forward to retirement and a small pension, can get anything out of this bill when she'll have to wait for 6 years after her retirement for this bill to take effect.
Minister.
Going to retire today and is operating in a business that has less than 49 employees. Adjustments will not begin until 6 years. The honourable member is correct. If, on the other hand, she is working in the broader public sector, adjustments and possibly complete payout will take place in 2 years. Now, I'm conscious of the concerns that the honourable members and the third party raise. I wish they'd stop asking me about pay equity, because I want the Conservatives to start asking these questions. I want to know. No, I came to question period today. I'm anxious to respond to the honourable member's questions, but I came to pay equity today. I came here today to see if there was any chance that we could glean where the official opposition stands on this bill. My honourable friend from Ottawa Centre has been on television and radio expressing her comments and issuing press releases, and so have we, but not a peep out of the official opposition. I'd like to know where they stand.
I believe the member for Cochrane South would like to ask a question, if you would allow that. We'll wait, though. No, we'll just wait. Order. The member for Cochrane South, new question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We now have an Attorney General that doesn't want to be asked questions, let alone answer them. That's pretty good. No doors or windows, right? No doors or windows.
The question is
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Natural Resources. The Minister of Natural Resources will be aware of the announcement yesterday of layoffs of Kimberly-Clark and Terrace Bay. You'll be aware of the recent announcement of layoffs by the Grenville Martin Lumber Mill in Sault Ste. Marie, the layoffs of the Dubray Brothers Mill in Dubrayville. Could I ask, and many others across Northern Ontario, could I ask the Minister how many ministers met with the officials of these companies and when those meetings took place and where they took place?
Minister?
Question would be difficult to answer, and I'll take it. Why do you find it surprising that I would have to look up the dates when we met with every one of the people that's being described by that part-time member? I have to tell you, I'm fully prepared to bring that man up to date because he's not here often enough to know what goes on, and I'm very willing. I'm very willing, Mr. Speaker. I'm very willing, Mr. Speaker, to examine my records. I have to tell the Assembly that more people in that business that relates to timber and lumber and wood products, more people have come through the Ministry of Natural Resources office in the last 2 years than have come through that office in the last 10 years. And so I'll get that information.
Why didn't you stop to talk to a few of them instead of just going right through?
Mr. Speaker,
Oh, we'll just... Order. Order. Maybe we could just calm down a little bit. The member for Cochrane South with a supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, the workers in Northern Ontario wish that that minister wasn't there at all on any day because he's done nothing to protect them over the past 6 months. Absolutely nothing. I want to know why this government has a different standard when it comes to layoffs here in Toronto at Goodyear as compared to the layoffs in Northern Ontario. When are you going to do something for the Northern Ontario workers?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the people of Northern Ontario have never been better represented than by this government. Never.
Perhaps the minister would just take a seat.
Any more answers, Vince?
Order. Would the members show a little respect? Would the members show some respect? Order. Order. Minister?
The people of Northern Ontario have never been better represented than by this government, the government of this day. And that's precisely what I said, and I hope the member examines Hansard to see if that wasn't precisely what I said the first time. So I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you one thing that's very important. The government, the present government, does not go up to Northern Ontario and tell Northerners one thing and come back to Toronto and say something else, which is precisely what those people over there do. And I have to tell you, there have never been more initiatives taken, more conscious initiatives to the people of Northern Ontario than by this present government, and it will continue for many more years to come.
New question, the member for Windsor Riverside.
To the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations, I'd like to ask the Minister if he stands by a letter that he wrote earlier this year, and I'll quote the first paragraph. In response to your letter dated February 11th, 1986 regarding changes to the Patent Act, it seems only fair that research-based companies in the pharmaceutical industry who expend large amounts of money for research and developing new drugs should be able to recoup their monies through patent protection for at least 12 years. Is that the position of the Liberal government in Ontario?
Minister?
That letter was written to Mr. Joseph Warner last February. And I should tell the honourable member that in the previous September, when I visited Heckle Island at a ministerial conference, I stated very clearly the position of this government to the then Minister, Michel Cote. I attended another meeting in Thunder Bay this year in September, and again delivered a very clear message to Harvey Andre, the government's position, and I stand by that position.
Supplementary, the member for Windsor Riverside.
Well, Mr. Speaker, for a minister
make him the Minister of Corporate Affairs, period.
Mr. Speaker, for a minister that stands by, I'm not sure what, I'm not sure whether it's the letter or the non-position that he's stated in the House today, maybe the minister can exactly tell us. Does he support the position of our party that what the Tories are trying to do is increase the price of drugs to consumers in this province, and that the current legislation now saves them $225 million a year, and if your plan is passed at the federal level, consumers in this province will have to pay $100 million per year extra as new drugs come out by 1991. What is the position of your party? Is it your letter that you wrote in February, which is very clear, or is it some other position that you're alluding to now?
Minister.
Speaker, the position is very clear. We support, at the very minimum, Mr. Eastman's report to a maximum of 4 years. That's as a minimum. Well, that letter, unfortunately, was written by a constituent representative, and it was an
Order. I didn't call for a supplementary. The member for Lincoln. Sorry. The member for... Order. New question, the member for Mississauga North.
Of the environment. A radio report earlier this morning has indicated that many thousands of gallons of ethylene glycol are now being sprayed by on airplanes to de-ice them by Air Canada at the Pearson International Airport. I've also been on the understanding that this particular chemical is now being filtered through Metro Toronto's waterways and ultimately into Lake Ontario. My question to the minister is he, number one, aware of this? And secondly, is it acceptable that this particular practice be carried on?
Minister?
Yeah. The answer to that, well, the member is the airport in your writing? I'm getting instruction by the member for Hamilton East, who wishes that he were the Speaker, Mr. Speaker. In answer to the specific question the member has, however, I must say that I am surprised that Air Canada, which is a crown corporation of the federal government, would carry out these practices of simply wasting its antifreeze that it puts on its planes in the wintertime for the purposes of de-icing the wings. It's an environmentally unacceptable procedure in my view, and second, since the federal government, the Conservatives don't consider this to be important, obviously.
That's right.
And second, Mr. Speaker, because of the fact that the federal government and its agencies appear to be very interested in saving money, I would think that in addition to being concerned about this environmentally sloppy practice, that they would also be concerned that they would be wasting a lot of their antifreeze. And it's my understanding that in other airports, Environment Canada has undertaken certain studies whereby they are able to recover this, and I think that has happened at Mirabel, for instance. So I find it environmentally unacceptable, and we have made contact with Transport Canada and with the Ministry of the Environment of Canada.
Hear, hear.
Supplementary.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. By way of supplementary, I understand that the particular practice, and I'm wondering that, keeping in mind that the airport is within federal jurisdiction and is being done, this particular de-icing by Air Canada, is there anything that the Minister of the Environment is currently planning to do with respect to this particular deposit of ethylene glycol in the waterways?
Minister? Order.
I think it's a relatively simple solution to the problem, because all they have to do, particularly they're dealing with large volumes of the antifreeze that they put on the planes, all they have to do simply is to construct gutters and holding tanks and recovery tanks rather, and that will collect the material, and they wouldn't have to allow it to go into the storm sewers and ultimately into the lake.
New question. The member. New question, the member for Lincoln.
Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations, he has in his capacity as the guardian of consumers on drug pricing now perhaps left us somewhat confused. His letter, although perhaps not intentionally, leaves us guessing and is a bit misleading. I wonder what position the minister expressed to Mr. Andre and other federal ministers on the issue of drug price protection.
Minister?
12 years.
Member from Lincoln, that the response was clear, it was unequivocal, that we opposed what they were doing. We opposed the granting of a period of exclusivity in excess of 4 years. We had actually, in my conversations with him, recommended that it be less than that. And we were as a matter of fact, I would say that we were the chief opponent at both the meetings at Hecla Island and the meetings in Thunder Bay.
Supplementary.
To the minister, then why did he say in his letter to Mr. Andre that it seems only fair that research-based companies in the pharmaceutical industry who expend large amounts of money for research in developing new drugs should be able to recoup their monies through patent protection for at least 12 years? Not 10, as was said in the legislation, but 12, Minister.
Order. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member is in error. The letter was not sent to Mr. Andre. It was sent to a Mr. Warner in February, and the letter was composed by one of my... It's a very significant difference. So what? It's a very significant difference. You're talking about a letter to a minister of the Crown, and I'm talking about a letter to a constituent.
Order. Should be recognized the member for a question. The member for Hamilton East.
Question of the Premier of Ontario. As leader of the Liberal Party, and in return for our support to allow you to form a government in the province of Ontario, one's
We're running out of time and luck. This is painful for the Tories.
you signed an accord, Mr. Premier, and one of the specific items in that accord read as follows, very briefly: reform of job security legislation, including notice and justification of layoffs and plant shutdowns, and improved severance legislation. Had we had that, it might have helped in the Goodyear situation. Can you tell me, Mr. Premier, where that legislation is on this particular item right now?
Premier?
The honourable member reminds me of discussions that took place, some 16 to 18 months ago.
Long time ago.
And I think it's worth celebrating on this occasion. I think you've found this government does what it says it would do. The kinds of things we discussed in the last campaign and subsequent to that. I know my honourable friend opposite would like to take credit for all the good things that the government does, but I always find it very curious. You're never prepared to take the blame when we make mistakes over here, and I think you want to share some of that as well. That being said, Mr. Speaker, the matter is under review by the minister at the present time, and he'll be able to share that with you when he's made his final determinations.
Supplementary.
Well, Mr. Premier, inasmuch as that was a signed agreement that you made, can you now tell us whether your commitment to justification of layoffs and plant shutdowns will include the Goodyear workers, and whether that company, which is profitable, is going to have to pay the price rather than the workers for what's happened at Goodyear here in Toronto?
Premier?
The layoffs are I gather notice was given for some 6 months from now. There are discussions going on at the present time. As you'll be aware from the discussions in the House today, two of our colleagues are there taking this matter very seriously at the moment. I can't promise you that things we introduce will be retroactive, but we are looking at that situation, trying to handle that on a specific basis. Now, there's some question about whether that factory is profitable or not profitable, whether it's competitive or not competitive. We've had discussions about that in the House yesterday, and I've told the honourable member what concerns me about that particular layoff is the suggestion, at least in some quarters, that's a function of a corporate reshuffling, loading on of debt to fight a takeover bid. I find that extremely disturbing, and I think it should be looked into by the members of this House. I'd be very happy if the Economic Affairs Committee of this House wanted to review that as a specific example of the whole question of corporate concentration.
New question, the member for Carleton Grenville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question of the Solicitor General. Could the Solicitor General confirm or deny that he is under investigation by the Metropolitan Toronto Police Force? Are you or are you not under investigation by the Metropolitan Toronto Police Force?
Appropriate question to address the Attorney General, but since addressed to me, I'll answer it that last week the Attorney General stood in his place and answered to the same question that he was instigating an investigation by the Metropolitan Police with regard to the incident in question.
Supplementary.
Mr. Solicitor General, in spite of what you may deem the severity of this offense, or in spite of what any of your colleagues might deem the severity of this offense, your government appoints the majority of the board of the Metro Toronto Police Commission. On your recommendation, the Commission is responsible for policing in Metro Toronto. Since you and your colleagues are in essential the bosses of the Metropolitan Toronto Police Force, do you not think it's inappropriate for you to remain as a member of the Executive Council?
Very interesting.
Minister.
Good question. Quite appropriate that I remain in the current capacity. We happen to control not only the majority of appointment to the Metropolitan Toronto Board of Commissioners of Police, but of every board of commissioners of police of this province. And therefore, it's a rather protracted argument to suggest that because we are in that position that it jeopardizes any impartial investigation.
New question, the member for York South.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question. I have a question to the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations with respect to the explosion which took place a week ago in my constituency. I now understand, after discussions with the Chief Fire Marshal and with people from your fuel safety branch, it's my understanding, Mr. Speaker, that the garage in question did not in fact have liability insurance on the date of the accident. I'd like to ask the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations if he can explain how it is that a garage which is engaged in this kind of a business would not have liability insurance.
Minister?
To that question, because in my capacity as the minister responsible for that part of my ministry that deals with the fuel handling, that is not a requirement. So we don't have a requirement that in order to have an installation put in that they have to have liability insurance. If they have insurance or if they don't have insurance is not something that our people check into.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, I hope the minister will appreciate that there are people living within 80 yards of this explosion. If the propane tank itself had gone off, many of those people, according to your chief engineer, would have been killed. I'd like to ask the minister, can he explain the complete breakdown in inspection? The garage was, by admission of your own officer yesterday, the garage was not inspected after March. It was not liable to inspection by your fuel safety branch. It was not inspected by the Ministry of Transport and Communications, and it was not inspected by the Ministry of Labor.
Never.
I'd like to ask the minister, what are you going to do to ensure that the residents who live nearby and the property owners who live nearby are going to get compensation for damage to their property? And what are you going to do to ensure that inspection starts to take place and that the people of this province are not made subject to the possibility of accidents where it can be prevented by decent inspection.
All due respect to the leader of the third party, the situation and the facts are these. The installation was made and inspected March the 17th, 1986. The inspection was found to be proper and adequate. The accident in the preliminary report, which hasn't been completed, is that in an adjoining garage that would never have been the subject of inspection, a workman inadvertently or by accident or by negligence cut a line. Now, no amount of inspection would have prevented that line from being cut. Now, those are the facts of the case, and there's nothing that we as an inspector could have prevented. Now, as far as the insurance issue, that again is not part of the mandate of the fuel inspection branch. We are currently examining the situation. I sympathize with the problem. We are looking at it to see what resolution can be made, but those are the facts of the case.
New question, the member for Burlington South.
Minister of Health. Your proposed new regulations governing pharmacists change the current 34-day limit on prescription drug supply to an 8-month limit with a dispense as written rule added. Mr. Minister, I'd like to bring to your attention an actual case in Burlington in which a senior citizen was prescribed Capitan at a cost to the ODB plan of $70.63 a month. After 2 weeks due to a drug reaction, she was switched back to her previous drug, propranolol, which cost $9.99 a month. Under your new regulations, the taxpayers could have lost close to $500 in that single instance due to wastage of the initial prescription. My question, Mr. Minister, do you believe saving a $5 a month in dispensing fees to the pharmacist justifies that kind of loss to the taxpayers?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the people of the province of Ontario are protected in various ways with respect to prescriptions being delivered by physicians. I happen to believe that if a physician prescribes a certain quantity of drug, it is on the basis of an informed and reliable judgment with respect to what is needed by that patient. There is in those regulations, and I'm sure that you would want to provide for the people an entirely accurate and thorough analysis of all the sections, which allow certain professional judgments and leeways of decisions with respect to the amounts to be dispensed by the pharmacists. We have agreed and, in fact, indicated to the college that we had agreed with their position on professional freedom to make judgments and decisions about the professional parameters in which dispensing medications are required. There are certain limits because of that professional freedom, which I'm sure you would understand would be very appropriate in perhaps not providing the full amount prescribed. The one item that I am concerned about, however, Mr. Speaker, when the member would want to analyze the professional decision not to dispense the entire quantity, would be that there be communication between the pharmacist, the professional who makes the decision about dispensing, perhaps because of an indication of profile of drugs being consumed by the consumer that might not be appropriate, that he or she communicate directly with the prescriber. I think that in fact is very important. And I can also tell the honourable gentleman that we have had communications with physicians and surgeons and others.
Order.
Minister, you know that your own government's advisory committee on senior citizens is concerned about the potential that this new legislation has for overuse or misuse of drugs, particularly where such large quantities can be made available. And this includes, as you are probably aware, the growing number of hospital admissions throughout Ontario for non-compliance with medication. Mr. Minister, whose health are you most concerned for here? The long-term health of our senior citizens in Ontario or the short-term health of the provincial treasury?
Minister.
Speaker, I think it's quite obvious that the member would understand that we're concerned about the health of seniors. We've talked considerably in our committee deliberations on these bills about the questions of appropriateness of prescribing medications, and I think that there are a number of people who came to talk to us about the opportunities that they had to review in some detail what drugs are being used and how they're being used by seniors and how they're being prescribed. I think from my standpoint that I was taken very much with some of the indications made by members of the association, the Pharmacists Association, and also by members of the consumer groups and by members of seniors associations when they expressed a very large degree of concern about the utilization of drugs in the province of Ontario. I can tell the honourable gentleman, however, Mr. Speaker, and the public, that there must be, and I expect there will be probably, a lot more communication as between prescribers and dispensers in consultation as a result of the Bill 54 and Bill 55 passages with the consumer, the very people who should know exactly what they're getting, why they're getting it, and from whom they're getting it. And I rather think, Mr. Speaker, that these bills will be helpful to instill in our system a great deal more communication than perhaps was there before, and I look forward to being able to implement these bills and having them proclaimed and enforced on December the 1st.
Question. The member for Lakeshore.
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that the Minister of the Environment has had already drawn to his attention the fact that up to 1 million litres of ethylene glycol per year can flow from Pearson International Airport right into the Mimico Creek. Would the Minister not agree that this is yet another loophole in his MISA program, and that in any of the programs he's already announced or in any of the practices currently in place in his ministry do nothing to stop this kind of pollution?
Minister?
Well, as the member, I almost said minister there, that'd be a mistake, but I'll try to be as comprehensive as my colleague in answering this question. But as the member would be aware, the MISA program was specifically designed to deal with direct discharges into the environment that come from industrial and municipal sources. Industrial in that they would be, for instance, from a Dow chemical plant, which would go directly into a waterway. Municipal in that they would come from one of the municipal sites in the province of Ontario, even one that would be operated by the Ministry of the Environment. There are other practices, of course, through the auspices of the Spills Bill, through the auspices of the transportation of hazardous goods, through a number of initiatives that are taken by both the federal and provincial government, which should prevent this kind of situation from arising. It seems to me there is, for instance, in this case, as there is in so many of the cases, a very straightforward answer to it. And that answer is to install the appropriate gutters and also to put in the necessary collection tanks. And they would find, as the member
Supplementary?
will...
Okay.
What you're saying is you have no
Answer,
power.
and he gave it. Supplementary?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm glad that the Minister knows what needs to be done about the problem.
When will it be done?
I would agree with him. His ministry needs to have guidelines for ethylene glycol. They've none at the moment. His ministry needs to have a requirement that Transport Canada have a permit in order to use this ethylene glycol. And also the study that Transport Canada had done in 1975, which recommended retention tanks, needs to be implemented. But can the Minister tell us what he intends to do about those solutions and when he intends to put them in place?
Minister.
40 seconds.
Mr. If you had asked the question that specifically in the first place, I might have tried to be more specific than I was in my initial answer to the member. But I do want to say to her that I share her surprise, for instance, that Environment Canada, who has looked into this matter, has not communicated successfully with Transport Canada in suggesting that this would be appropriate. Mr. Speaker, I think what's particularly important arising from the member's question is this. The member and I both attended a conference in Hamilton at McMaster University on the weekend where the issue of jobs in the environment arose. And I think some of the suggestions that emerged from that were that, in fact, money could be saved by undertaking environmentally safe practices. And that's why if Air Canada are not of their own volition prepared to save that money and at the same time be environmentally safe, of course we as a ministry are going to ensure that those gutters are installed and that the recovery tanks are installed, and that be done at the earliest opportunity.
That's right.
New question. The member for Mississauga South.
Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Citizenship and Culture. The Minister is aware that the passage of an amendment to the Retail Sales Tax Act contained within Bill 26, which proposes to eliminate the 10% exemption currently granted to not-for-profit theatres, will mean a loss of some $1.6 million to the 6 major Ontario performing arts centres alone, even though the Treasurer has defined this amendment as revenue neutral. The Minister is also aware that this revenue is badly needed by these theatres to support volunteer community orchestras, to support Canadian artists, and to cover the general operating costs of community theatres.
Question.
I would like to ask the Minister, in view of these realities, has she discussed this matter with the Treasurer, and what is the outcome of that discussion?
Minister.
And does she agree with this, yes or no?
Minister. Minister.
Okay. Our ministry has certainly had discussions with the Ministry of Revenue and has received many items of correspondence speaking to the issue on both sides of the question. And I think the Treasurer is certainly sympathetic, but feels very strongly that the bill should go forward as indicated.
Time for oral questions has expired.